Welcome everybody to our special InPower Coffee Break today. This is our last one before a summer break in 2017, and we are going to have a powerful conversation with my partner in crime these last year or so, Mary Brodie, and we're going to talk about the fluid career from her point of view and in the work she's doing, because it's fascinating to kind of look over her career. To me, she's the prototype of a truly fluid career. She's now starting an online master's in corporate communications, where she gets to go to Europe a lot. So maybe she'll talk to us about that. And she has her business and her clients. So before she continues her focus on school and takes a break from these coffee breaks, we're going to have this conversation and get the benefit of her wisdom. You can find these coffee breaks recorded at coffeebreak.InPowerCoaching.com. I'm Dana Theus, founder of InPower Coaching, and we like to talk about the InPower angle on everything. So how can you experience anything and come out feeling more personally powerful as a result? So Mary Brodie is here. I'm going to read her bio because it's very interesting. Sets us up for a good conversation. Mary creates customer and user experiences using different types of technology, from apps to web phones. Her company, Gearmark, focuses on building customer relationships through these experiences in content, apps, social media, and more. With the rise of mobile and sensors, she's been noticing that the focus of experiences is shifting from tap clicking communications, content, speech bots, things like that. As an entrepreneur, she has a passion for startups and has worked with many. She founded her own business and collaborated with others to start a few. She is also a writer, and she writes on her blog, so go read her writings. Her interests span from how people experience technology and communicate with each other online and offline to women, leadership, and entrepreneurship. When she's not designing, writing, or working on a business, she's either at the gym, at her home studio belly dancing. She was formerly a professional belly dancer, which I didn't know, Mary. Or she's in her kitchen cooking. Her personal motto comes from Yoda: do or do not, there is no try, which is great. I always tell my kids that. So welcome, Mary. You're an official guest. You're official.
Thank you. Yeah, I know. It's like different to be on the other side of the equation. So thank you.
Exactly. Well, part of the reason I wanted to end our sort of fluid career series, coffee breaks, besides we all need a summer break. But the reason I wanted to end with you is because, it was you and I talking about what the modern career is that kind of gave birth to this idea of fluidity, this idea that, we move from career experience to career experience, and that we have the choice to make that a traumatic or a flowing thing. And, I look at your career, and the thing that impresses me, so a lot of people go from experience to experience, and what always impresses me and intrigues me, because I think it's good insight for other people trying to manage their career, is, what's the common thread? Because it can look like we're doing very different things, but a truly fluid career is, a person's own kind of giving birth to themselves, finding their potential, living into their potential. So there's almost always a common thread. And when I look at your background, you've worked for big companies and startups, you've started companies, you've been consulting, you've worked in writing and marketing and consulting and technology companies, and I know you, and I know there's a common thread. So what do you think that is?
Oh yeah, so it's kind of interesting because when I was in school long ago, I had a lot of interest in technology, and that's where I started in engineering school, and I didn't like it, and I think I
don't see you as a happy engineer.
No, they wanted. It was kind of interesting because I didn't like the engineering side, and in some cases I wasn't necessarily good at it. And one of the professors, though, thought I had talent for like physics, believe it or not. And I just didn't, and I didn't want to take it because I didn't like my classmates. I mean, talk about like, I'm all into emotions and relationships then, right? Because I'm like, I don't know, I don't like these people. And I was actually a little afraid of them because it was a lot of men who, at the time, because I think they were young, they had the need to be right. So, and I had a couple of interactions with some of these guys that I wasn't like, I might have been right, but because they felt they should be right, like I was made to feel wrong, even though I had the right answer. Because then it's like, how could this woman who likes to throw parties have the right answer? Anyway, so I left engineering school and they weren't too pleased about that. But I went into more writing. And so I didn't know that the web was going to exist. I didn't see that until I was at a job trying to be a project manager without a lot of tools and try to figure out how to manage budgets and stuff. I've never done this before. I had this fictional tale in my head that I was terrible with money. So needless to say, I wasn't doing a good job.
Was this a startup company?
It was a startup, yeah. And so the startup that was in the desk next to them, because they had a bunch of startups in this one office environment, and the startup next door, they said, well, look at this thing, this web, right? This Netscape thing. And I was like, well, that's kind of interesting. And so anyway, I left that place and did a couple of other stints, and I ended up at this company. I started off, I always joke about I was an overeducated administrative assistant because I had a master's degree, and there I am sitting directing calls and answering the phones. So, but they wanted me to help them with their website. And that's what I came in for, because they saw the English background and they said, this will definitely get things rolling. And one of the things I started noticing with the engineers was that they weren't getting along. So it was a call center. And I'd have to direct calls because things were kind of manual back then, right? They had a call distribution system, but it wasn't like it was today. I mean, now we're talking at this point 20 years ago, right? So the technology was it was all in DOS, kind of. So, so I would have to route these calls, and I started noticing that the engineers would just take off. And I think part of the situation was that they were all very talented, very well-educated engineers. And I think sometimes they were like, oh my God, I work in a call center, right? I think that was part of it, right? And the other part of it was they didn't necessarily respect their colleagues. They would leave their colleagues with the work. They wouldn't talk to them. They'd just get up and leave, right? And just leave their poor colleague. Like one poor guy had to take 20 calls in a day because his colleagues just vanished. They went and took meetings and they just went off, right? So, and then I'm looking at these poor customers. They're getting a horrible experience, right? Everything's just spiraling down into the toilet. So, the managers knew they were trying to fix it. They're trying to do metrics. And I was like, well, wouldn't it be nice if everyone would just get along? Right. And that's where I think I started. I didn't know it then, but I was looking, it really was the customer experience I was caring about. Like, we have answers online. I want people to, get their calls answered. And I want also the team to get along. And so we started implementing, like we called it the etiquette, because we didn't want to say guidelines and we didn't want to say rules. So we're like basically how to consider each other in the workplace. And before you go, like, make sure you talk to other people and make sure you do this and make sure you do that. And that helped contribute to significant results. And the team did fantastic. And and that's where I was in that group and contributed quite a bit. They were trying to sell more services and I did a lot there. And that's where I would say I started getting into user experience because I was working more on the web, but I also had this, what should this experience be? And I started thinking in those terms. And I think that started, and now that I'm seeing like what's happening in the world, it's like we had all these relationships before, and these online experiences help us get to relationships in the future.
So actually, it's really interesting you say that, because I've never heard you articulate it like that. Because what I'm hearing you say is that it's the relationship between people that really turns you on, and you want to facilitate that. You want to help create and facilitate good relationships between people. And the commercial application of that in your career has been customers and their their companies.
Yeah, and that's where I think especially working in user experience.
But it sounds like your interest goes beyond that.
Yeah, so like when I was doing more user experience projects, a lot of times what I'd find is there was a sentiment in business, and this is where it gets really interesting, because I think online provides a transparency to companies, right? That I don't think the companies are even aware of. Like, customers know that if you have a disjointed experience, that more than likely you have a disjointed organization. They pick up on that, right? Like if you go to AT&T's website and you're going from this to that to this to that, you start to realize, I think they don't realize that customers are pretty bright. And as they're online more and more, they learn more and more about businesses and how they work and what they do. And they have an expectation now, especially with Amazon and Google, like, why don't you do this? And it's like, well, I have a baby site and we haven't built it yet, but they don't get that, right? And they shouldn't have to, that's not their job. But when I started noticing is like, sometimes the business would almost try to pull a fast one. And I'd have to tell them like, no, customers see this. Like, instead of us hiding it, let's be honest. Let's just come forth with it, right? And provide all the options and try to do it in a way that they can understand it, right? It's almost like, how do we communicate with them through clicking, right? Of what they need to do next.
Right.
So that's where I started. I'd say it's more recently with seeing the rise of content and communication taking over and social media. And now we're seeing chatbots and artificial intelligence, and, you know, devices are getting smaller. Our fingers aren't getting smaller. So we're going to have to talk to these things, right? So at some point, you know, and the voice technology is getting better. I wouldn't say it's fully there yet, but it's getting better. It's improving. We're going to, I think interactions are going to start to change. And I think we're seeing that a lot with media and social media and how we use these devices, and also the clarity we're starting to interact with companies and seeing what they're like to work with, and their brands coming out in interesting ways.
Well, you know, it's interesting because hearing you talk, it seems to me like you're interested in this phenomenon in the outside world.
Yeah.
And that as that phenomenon evolves, your career has evolved to, you know, follow it and be in it and be a player in it. And that's a very different than many people who I think come at their careers and just go, oh, it's all about me. What's going to make me happy now? And I see you kind of marrying two things. You know, one is you want to be fulfilled, but you also want to be, you know, growing with this industry that you think is fascinating and contributing to it. And that's a really great motivation, and probably helps you keep up with a very fast moving career field.
Yeah. You know, and this, you're reminding me about this story when I was early on in my career, when I was working on the etiquette and all that. And I remember going to an internet conference and they were talking about basically like cloud apps, right? And working in the cloud. And they were talking about this in like 95, 96. And especially with the rise of Java, and they're like, oh, we're going to take all our apps, we're going to put them on the web. And I remember being in this one company, and I started saying to them, well, why don't we offer our product online? Wouldn't you think this would be better? Because I'm like, look at the vision, right? We deal with a lot of data. We could have the data in our data center. Excuse me. And I was like going on and on and on. And, you know, at first, like and I was telling this to like the CTO and all that, like I was all excited, right? And I was like this young kid. And they were saying no. And it's interesting because at the time they were saying no because their software didn't translate very well to the newer technologies, right? And I didn't necessarily know this or understand that. And then there's also the whole concept of this cloud thing that I think they knew, they saw the future, and I think they saw how much data would be involved, and I think they saw that as, oh my God, that's scary.
And it was also to them at the time, because I was working for a career builder at the same time, we were going through the same conversations. It seemed very far off. It's like, it's going to be a long time till our customers buy into that. And so we don't need to be on the bleeding edge of that. We can't afford to be on the bleeding edge of that. So there were a lot of businesses, technology businesses then, that were like playing it more conservative. And for people like you and me, it's like, no, we want to go be part of the new cool stuff. It could be a little frustrating.
Oh yeah. And like, you know, they were still supporting certain technologies that I was like, seriously, like these are old. Like, why are we continuing to support old? Like, that's not where things are going to go. And I don't think it helped at the time when Bill Gates came out and said that the internet's just a fad. You know,
turned that around pretty quickly though.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, I don't think he had a choice. I think the media just kind of had a field day with that one because that was just so ridiculous. But yeah, I think I've kind of seen, like, you know, when I started working online, I started seeing where I kind of fit and kind of saw where my career kind of went. And I also had this parallel track too of entrepreneurship because I was interested in that from an early age. That was in college. I was working for this guy who he had a big corporation. It was tuition payment plan company. And so he had this side business of all the businesses he wanted to do all his life. And so he had like 4 or 5 little startups within this one company. So like my days would be filled with, was it one day I sold an oil crane. I was talking to Pakistan.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Not really knowing what I'm doing. And then another day I'd work on their hotel. Another day I'd work on this other project. So it was a lot of fun. And I was like, this is what I want to be an entrepreneur. And I think that's always been, it's always appeared. Like then I worked with a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine who unfortunately has passed on, but he and I worked on, I think 3 or 4 startups that never made fruition. And we started like realizing why as time went on, or something would get to a certain point of success, and like how we started realizing what it took to get to success. So I think I got a lot of learning lessons out of that.
So what's the short form of what you learned, just to save the rest of us?
Oh yeah. So the short form would be, sometimes you get in your own way. And that, you know, you might have this 1 or 2 things to do that might seem like a great big deal, administrative deal. Just get through it and make it happen. I know one was limited because he just wouldn't get his 501c3 ID, where we could have had an event. All he needed was that ID. And then we have an event and we get money. That fundraising event just never happened. And then there was another case where we launched a publication, and we had a couple of great publications, but because of what it would take to get it into different venues to be sold or distributed, he just didn't, like, it was like, oh my God, like we could have made this go. Like we were making money. What were we doing? So
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as you know, the decisions about where to put your energy, whether it's a company or individually, are always hard decisions.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I want to return to sort of a theme you started to talk about, because I think, well, for many of us in our generation, you know, I'm older than you, but I'll say I'm younger, you know, have experienced this, but I think the next generations behind us this is going to be their experience on steroids, which is, you know, when you go into a field now, the job you're going to have 20 years from now doesn't exist today.
Right.
With a few exceptions, but more often than not, you know, things are getting automated. New markets are being created. New technology is being created that changes how we capitalize on the market opportunity that's there. You know, consumer tastes are changing, et cetera. So I think that, you know, the modern career challenge is to figure out, you know, not what job you're going to have even now or maybe now, but, you know, not for the next 10 years or 20 years or for your career, but what career field are you in? What is it that, like you said, that interests you, that keeps you growing and learning along with the job market, the career field, the technology, et cetera. It keeps you growing and moving so you can stay abreast with these new opportunities that we can't see until sometimes they just kind of find us and we're like, wow, I didn't know anybody did that.
Right.
The guys who were saying, oh, look at this internet thing. By the way, I had the exact same experience. I was working in marketing for an on-demand video trial that Bell Atlantic was running. And these guys in the cube next to me are like, you got to try this mosaic thing. It's so cool. And I'm like, oh my God, that just looks too hard, you know, and a whole long story there. But yeah, and then the next thing you know, I'm all about the internet in my career. So
yeah.
So what is the advice that you give to people younger in their career about how to think about the long-term arc of their career and staying up with the opportunities that will present themselves?
Yeah, I have multifaceted advice for that.
I thought you would.
Yeah. I think the first one is always, you can't be almost too hard on yourself and kind of let it unfold, right? Like kind of don't stress about it. Cause some of these technologies, like you said earlier, right? Like I got all stressed out about that app thing with that company. Like, oh my God, we got to go. Right? No, don't get all wound, Axel, like just stop. Right. And cause some technologies are going to go really fast and some technologies are going to move slower.
And some are going to fizzle out.
Right. And it's going to take some while to learn to be able to judge that. Like now I think I can see things like, you know, like people will say stuff about chatbots. And I think some of these companies are doing a lot of great work and development on them, but there is a lot of work still to be done. Like it's still in a transactional phase. You can't have a conversation right now, like a functional conversation with a chatbot. You're still going to go back like, do you like cheese? Like, you know, it's just not there. So, but that means that there's great opportunity, right? So it's almost like you can suss out like what's going to be the growth factor and all that. And then there are current trends of where people are taking things and what they're doing, and see, and always keep an eye out, I think, for the trends. I think when it comes to education, this is where it goes back to, I think when I hear kids going to school and they get all stressed out, like, what should I major in, right? And I'm always like, all right, at least like first go to school and focus on learning how to think. Because with all these technologies and stuff like that, like everyone says, like, get the career and learn how to program. And I think it takes a special person to be a programmer. You have to have a certain way to think and a certain way to relate and interact with technology. I think there are some people, like there's always roles and room for people who can tell a story or can understand human interaction, right? Because humans have to interact with this technology. There's always room for that. So kind of, I always think, you know, focus on how to think and do what you like to do in school. Because everything's technology now, right? Even marketing's all technology. Even the advertising is technology. Like it's all, you gotta know it anyway. You don't have a choice. So I'd say those are the things to kind of, if you know how to think and you're learning how these trends kind of work and understand how this technology works and start to see what are the long game technologies, what are the short game technologies, I think you'll be able to navigate better.
And I think too, just to emphasize the point you're making and the way you're making it, you know, when you understand an industry or a technology or a trend, you know, and you have personal curiosity about it, just to go back to our conversations with Lynn, right? Like curiosity that turns you on. First of all, you get energy from it, but important for your job, for your career path, is that if you're following something that you enjoy and you're learning about it and you have a perspective about it, when you go in to interview on any job in that industry, people are like, oh my gosh, they actually bring some knowledge and some perspective, and that has additional value above the fact that you can do accounting or you can do customer service or you can do account management or whatever it is that you have to, that your skills are developing in, because everything's changing so fast that really the most successful companies, everybody in the company is paying attention to that market. And I think that a lot of us traditionally, that's, you know, the people who had to worry about the market were in sales and marketing and like, you know, maybe finance, and the CEO, you know, like everybody else could just do their job. And now that can be true, but it's much more engaging for the company because they got to be nimble. They got to pivot. They got to have everybody looking for information that's going to help them, particularly small startups. And so if you're an accountant that pays a lot of attention to your industry and finds it interesting, you got a leg up when it comes to interviewing for those jobs and then advancing within, you know, the companies that you're involved in, because it's like, oh, look, somebody actually cares about what we do and what our customers need. And, you know, that can pay off.
Yeah, and you're bringing up, like when you said with curiosity, and I think this also goes to creativity. And I think there's been a sad state that's happened that certain fields aren't creative. Like, for example, operations or sales gets creative, and that's always been seen as creative, or accounting. Accounting gets creative to a degree, don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about Enron.
Right, that's the wrong kind of creative.
That's not the creativity I'm talking about. But there's ways we can do tracking and stuff like that. And I think that what's exciting about careers right now is that there is this opportunity for creativity on how to do your job better, more efficiently, and automation and how automation plays into it. And we shouldn't see automation as a horrible word, because automation frees us to do these more creative things. So someone in accounting might realize, you know, hey, I can automate this one thing, and maybe I can start thinking about, you know, or I can reach out to this other group that I'm seeing is spending way too much on this particular item. Maybe we can optimize that, right? What can we do to make that better? But you have the time to think about it rather than just doing your day to day. And I think people are, because you were saying something before about like with the curiosity, like going to the job interview and bringing these ideas. And I think that's the organizations are getting, I think, more flat in that respect too. That everyone contributes ideas. And I think that also gets to a shift also with personal ego. Like you don't, like what ownership is and where do boundaries lie. And like everyone can give you input and feedback. And I think that's a new concept in a lot of companies, that everyone can give an idea. And how does that play out?
So, what's interesting though, you're describing, let's go back to the accountant you described,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That you're describing somebody who is interested in their job, who wants to explore themselves and new opportunities and has curiosity in their job. And so looks at automation as an opportunity to free them up from some of the rote activities and go do something more creative. And there are people who don't want that in their job. They just want to go and do their job. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes they have often they have a very rich life outside of it,
Right.
And so I am always conscious of the fact that, not everybody looks at their career as, an opportunity to really grow themselves personally, the way I do, the way you do. And, but it strikes me that success in the future is almost going to require people who want to succeed in their work. And by that, I don't just mean climb the ladder, but, keep finding opportunity, because a lot of things are going to get automated, a lot of things are going to get automated in the next 20 years alone, in accounting and core jobs. And so it's going to sort of force all of us to be more creative in our career if we want to continue to find opportunity. And that's kind of a new way of thinking about career more broadly. And I like, the reason I wanted to mention this is because the people that I talk to are kind of like, well, I just kind of want a job. When you talk to them about the curiosity aspect, like, well, just find something that's interesting to you, that gives you a little energy, and just ask a question about it. When they start doing that, then all of a sudden it's not work.
Right.
Because they don't want to go to work and do the work they have to do plus additional work. So I think part of the fluid career is getting into the habit of being curious and following that curiosity. And then the other part is not letting the company shut you down, because the company often doesn't think it's there for your benefit, and that's too bad when that's the way the company approaches it. And sometimes you just have to do it anyway and be ready to leave the company if you're not getting your curiosity satisfied, you're not getting your needs met. And that's part of what I think the new mindset is around the fluid career, is like, I'm not going to expect the company to give me what I need in my working career. I'm going to take ownership for going out and finding it. And I'm curious, in your experience, like, when did you figure that out?
Okay, so the best career advice I ever got was from this woman that I dotted line into when I was in that first company, and I switched over from customer service into marketing. And I was young. I didn't know what I was doing. So I was like complaining to her one morning, yeah, and she started telling me, like, look, what are you in it for? What are your personal goals for this position, and what do you want to get out of it? And I started, that's when I started realizing, you go into a job, what's your goal? And if your goal is not going to be met, like if they're blunt and tell you, like I had one position where they told me my goal was like kind of to get promoted. That was what I was in it for, right? And because I wanted to go in, work there, leave, and have the cachet of a promotion when I go back to my own business. That's what I wanted. When they told me it wasn't going to happen for like 3 to 5 years, the first thing I was like, no, we're done. Like, it's time for me. Like my self-esteem is low in this position. It's not going to get raised anytime soon. Can I hang out for 3 to 5 years? No, this is not helping me in my career progress. It's time to move on, right? They're not going to give me what I need. In most cases, I've found I've gone in, gotten what I wanted, and then it's time for the next thing. I think that's why your bell curve with the red is like, so like because I'm like, that's what I kind of do is I go in, I have my goals, I perfect what I want to do. And then I come to a point like, okay, I did it. Doing it well. Now what? What's next? Yeah.
So, so you are one of the most passionate people I know.
Yeah.
and we've had kind of an on and on conversation in these talks about, the role of passion in career. And I forget, we talk about the dirty jobs guys advice, like don't do what you love, or don't follow your bliss, or whatever.
Yeah.
Like there's this debate about whether you should follow your passion or not in your career. And as with most things, I think it's a little of both, right? But what role has passion played? What's the double-edged sword for you in your career, on how it's helped you and how maybe it hasn't, and where are you on that now? Like, how are you incorporating passion into your career development?
Yeah, so I've always been excited and liked my job. I have to say, what I do for work, I've always enjoyed it. And I always make sure I enjoy it. When I don't enjoy it anymore, that's when I start to realize it's time to go.
You're at the end of the bell curve.
Yeah. And I think but then the passion kind of goes to the interaction with people. And this is also advice I would give to someone young, that it comes to boundaries. And I think that's where, with passion, this is why I think I can be more the happy-go-lucky as I get older, is learning the boundaries. So learning, understanding people's roles and who owns what, and make sure that that's always clear. Who owns what, who owns that final decision. And I know it sounds kind of a little hard-line-ish, but when you understand who owns the final decision, I think it helps you also better communicate your stand, and they can see your passion for your decision, and then also measure your passion for, like, is the world, I didn't get this when I was young, right? Is the world going to end if this doesn't happen your way, right? And there's some things that I'm like, okay, if that's what you want to do, okay, go do that. But then there are some things that, honestly, yes, you will screw up your business if you don't do this. Like, there was one case where I had almost like a breakdown. It was like work at this one company I worked at, and it came to promotion codes. And what they wanted to do is have no mechanism in the site to help track someone from an email to purchase. They wanted you to manually enter in your promotion code. I know there are sites that do that today. I think it's a horrible practice, because someone's coming from an email. Do you really think they're going to go back and get the promotion code? And the philosophy I heard was, no, they're not. And that's where we make money. And I'm like, like, come on. That fosters zero trust with a customer, right? And, but the customer, the VP of marketing, she sided a little with me. She's like, you really have to speak your piece on this, because she's like, you kind of have the point. So it's like knowing when is a good time to raise your point, knowing who owns that decision, so you can have a better communication, better conversation with them. And also, the other thing that I'm quite passionate about is listening, because sometimes listening, you can find out why someone might be passionate about their perspective too. I just recently had this with a client where I didn't understand, like, we'd have conversations about something, and they would say very passionately, no, we want it this way. And the whole lot of them were saying, no, we want it this way. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute, something's going on why they're so passionate. And then the rest of us are like, and sat down and listened, and I totally understood their perspective. And then we can go and have a better conversation in the organization, rather than like,
labeling them crazy.
Right. And it comes to understanding the boundaries and the balance, who owns what, and being open to listen to that other passion side of the equation, and starting that, because that opens, I think, the dialogue. So at least you might not agree with it, but you understand it. And if you don't agree with it, at least you know how to talk to it.
Right. Yep. Well, how about other passions? Like, how does your passion for belly dance make you more successful in your career?
Believe it or not, it was Fluidity. I have a whole series on my blog about agile and dancing to live music and belly dance. And what it taught me was how to let go and work with a team. And when you do live music with belly dance, you don't know what they're going to play. Sometimes the band plays for you what they think is fitting. It's just, that's part of the deal, right? So,
and sometimes they play rock and roll and you have to adapt.
I've gone up there. They're like, they just look at me and suddenly they play something Turkish. I typically did Egyptian. I didn't know the song, and I'm just like, well, here we go. And so you learn how to interact with other people on the fly. So you get more comfortable with I would say, more being in the moment. And that being in the moment isn't bad. I know there's a tendency sometimes for plans, right? And like plans and plans for plans and plans for plans that have plans. And sometimes being a little more, I'm looking for the right word, but it's like the more impromptu in the moment, right? Spontaneous. Yeah. It's not a bad thing. And sometimes it does make you more flexible. Because if you think like, even like with driving, if we were doing the plan for the plan, can you imagine the driving manual would be like this? And you have to drive with it and be like, oh my God, I'm in this situation. I got to go to page 554. Like you just couldn't do it. So it teaches you how to think a little differently and how to respond. I think that respond on the fly that was invaluable. What that taught me, and how to break your fear to get up in front of someone. Because I mean, hey, let's face it, you're scantily dressed and you get in front of a bunch of people
that you don't know.
And you got to do, and then you're dancing with a group of people who are playing whatever they want. And so, hey, okay, here we go. Got to be relaxed in the moment.
Well, I like that. It probably built a lot of confidence in you too.
Tremendous amount. I know the way I started off and the way I ended up were like two different people.
Yeah. I think it's always fascinating to look at how outside of work passions grow us in ways that make us more effective, in all parts of our life, but especially at work.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also taught me between belly dance and I'd say going to the gym, the whole concept of pace and listening to your own internal pace versus sometimes the external pace. Because sometimes people they're on a different pace, and that's okay. But don't let it, and I do this a lot lately with the gym, is like other people in the group might be all done with their round and I'm still plugging through it. But I don't see that as bad. See it as you're doing it different. Mm-hmm. And feel comfortable with the pace, and also recognize and hear yourself if things are off or you don't think you can do it, right? You're better off to, like sometimes if we have a hard leg workout, with the cardio, I'll back it off a little because I'll do the elliptical and I'll back it off with the level on the elliptical. Cause I'm like, my legs are going to be tired and I need to do 20 minutes. Is this worth it? Right. And you start to think a little different. Like there's pushing and then there's pushing to impossible.
Yeah. There's pushing and then there's stupid.
Yeah. And stay and do what you think you can do.
Right. And I like what you're saying about, listening to your body, your own sense of self in terms of, what do I need today? Because when we do that in life, often it's a different answer than here's what's on my to-do list, as opposed to, well, what does the world need from me and what do I need today? That may not look like my to-do list, but if I get what I need and the world gets what it needs, frankly, I'm happier than if I just don't get halfway through my to-do list and I'm frustrated.
Right. That's so true. I know if I don't get to certain tasks that are helping me along on my mission and goals, I do get antsy.
Right.
Physically.
Well, that's because those goals are real for you. You've got their intentions for you. They're driving you and motivating you. And when you get demotivated when you're not moving towards them. And that's the value of having those kind of personal intentions. Too many people just don't, they're just kind of hang out and wait for the world to give them their next opportunity, and they end up frustrated. So just in closing out, peer into the future for a minute about, going back to this idea of where you see your industry going and where you see yourself going in it. Like what's turning you on today? What's pulling you forward? What's the future look like in your career and in the industry together?
So I think technology has come such a long way, and we've made tremendous leaps and bounds progress. And I think that there's a lot of automation that's happening, a lot to be had, but I think the processes for that are kind of under control. I think that's now in a late stage. It's doing its thing. I think the next thing is to get back to emotions and relationships and what does that look like in this new world. I think in some ways that has fallen off the radar a little bit.
You're talking about the new world of customer experience?
And how I think we've gone a little too much transactional, right, versus the relationship. And I think that there's a lot of emotions that need to come back, right? Because people make decisions. I listen to this guy, Dr. Srini Pillay, and I've heard some of his audiobooks. I know I should read his books, but I did the audiobook. And he talks more about that more emotional side, like what motivates people to do things. And we always think like we make logical decisions. No, we don't.
No, we don't.
And he was talking about like some of it is the fear, right? So like, why would you purchase something? And it's not necessarily fear of like the missing out or something like that. It's more fear that something else in your life, like why you might have a leaky roof. You could have a leaky roof for a year and you don't do anything about it, right? But you know, you get your leaky roof and you're like, oh yeah, I got a leaky roof. Then you have a rainstorm, and then what's the motivation to call the guy? Oh my God, all my stuff is gonna like get destroyed in this rainstorm.
Right.
Now it's real, right? This is a real fear. I'm gonna lose my house and everything. And so I think that type of thinking is gonna start coming into technology, right? Because now we've got, how does technology work? How can we get it to do things? Now it's like, how can we make it a better interaction with humans? Because right now the human interaction is typing and touching, and that's not how, you don't go up to someone and type on a keyboard to say hello to them. That's just not how this works. So
Kind of a weird thought.
Yeah, and I don't think we've really thought before, and I think this is where the world of AI gets very exciting. We haven't really thought before, how do we communicate with each other and how do we have interactions with each other? And I think AI is going to force us to do that. Like the great example of the Microsoft, the little bot that the little baby bot that they threw out into the world and said, okay.
You mean the paperclip?
No, this is the one that went on social media. And they started off the nice little innocent child that came back as the racist, sexist. Well, I'm not even going to say because I get really nasty about it, but it came back as a jerk.
Right.
It reflected what it heard, and that's what it learned in less than a day. Like I think they had to shut it down in less than a day. Like it was horrible. It turned into a horrible little being. And I think that gets us to wonder, how do we interact? And then how do we interact online versus offline? I think there's going to be more with, there's now starting to see connections between psychology and actual brain activity that I think is going to be really exciting in the next few years. And how does that impact AI, right? And how we communicate, and how would an AI need to interact? And I think another area that no one's really been talking about, but I know has been kind of bugging me, and I want to do some writing and some research type things on it, is we're making AI do things we don't want to do. And it's a human tendency that we find a group of people that we suppress and say, we don't want to do this stuff, so you do it. And it goes back to like some of the Zen masters and like what they've come back with, like, you really should clean your own house. It's therapeutic for you.
Right. Yeah.
You should clean up your own stuff. It's therapeutic. We all should do this. And I think that type of thinking needs to happen with AI, because I think unfortunately AI could be a being that's very dangerous if unchecked. And I think we've seen that with Isaac Asimov's thought in I, Robot of how it's their perspective of it, because they will have a perspective. So there might be one day that, we're having robots clean our houses, do our stuff, our data stuff that we don't want to do. And then one of them just needs a thought. If they're all connected, right? All IoT, they're all like connected. And one of them has a thought, wait a minute, what are we doing? And then it'll be bedlam and chaos. But what we bring to the table that I think an AI would take centuries to get to is creativity. And if we can work with AI, and that would be a collaboration, but what does that look like? I think that's actually an interesting, and I think it might also help some ideas that humans have of each other as well. How do we work together? How do we collaborate? And how do we come together? And then we start looking at AI that way. It's not that servant slave mentality. It's more, how do we work together to make a goal? And so we're all doing work that we're good at and like to do.
So given that that's your view of a better future, what is the role you in your fluid career? Where do you see your career flowing into this?
I'm looking at the customer relationships and how since businesses are also moving more peer-to-peer, right? How do we interact with each other? And I think right now it's going to be peer to company, and companies need to realize that people aren't doing not just business with the company, but people in the company, right? So if people in the company aren't happy and they're not doing a good, like, this is why we have problems, right? And also, what are these relationships emotionally? What do they feel like? Like, are your employees empathetic to your customers, or do they hate them? I hate to say this, in a lot of companies, you start picking up a vibe like, I don't think your employees like your customers. And no one really wants to talk about that, but you can, like, and you feel bad, like when you have people who work in customer support, for example, right? So they're on the phone answering the same question all day long. They need tools to help them like these people, because you can't blame them. They've been either had the phone hung up on them, or again, how do you do this simple thing? It's like, oh, for God's sakes, just go online and read it. Anyone would feel that. Anyone. You can't. Anyone. But how do you work with them so they do stay happy and chipper to this, and reframe that conversation of, instead of this is another person with the same problem, it's more this person has this problem too. Maybe I should talk to product about that. Right. And maybe we're seeing a trend, and this other poor soul, right? Not just
right.
Anyway.
Well, and also, I mean, I think what you're talking about, which is compelling to me, is when you look at people as people and you begin to have compassion for them, it's not about the thing they're doing, it's about the state that they're in. And, they're in a stress state. So your goal is to help them get out of a stress state, even if it's doing that simple thing or something that doesn't stress you out, doesn't mean it doesn't stress them out. And that's a human to human skill, like you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's going to end up being, we're going to get more humanity back into technology.
I think there's a lot of people that would welcome that.
I think, yeah.
Awesome. Well, we have gone over our usual time, but we had a fascinating conversation, and I wish you well in your new master's program. That's really exciting. And I look forward to seeing the new Mary communicator when you're done.
Well, thank you. I know I'm going to be missed doing these. Like, I realized today, like, it hit me, like, this is the last one.
Yeah, well, we're gonna revive it somehow, in the fall, and we'll invite you back to the extent you want to be.
Yeah, no, that would be great, because I know I'm going to miss these, because these are a lot of fun to have the conversations. They've been great conversations all along. So anyone listening, there's great material. Go listen to the past conversations.
Yes, definitely. coffeebreak.InPowerCoaching.com. And we're going to actually put some of the highlighted sort of feature articles, feature conversations up there. It's part of what we'll do this summer is, filter through them and pick out some of the best. So go to coffeebreak.InPowerCoaching.com. All right, Mary. Well, good luck. Have a wonderful summer, and we will re-engage next fall.
Sounds great.
We all have new energy after our summer vacations.
Well, thank you, Dana. This was a lot of fun.
Good.
All right.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.